Hey all, back this week to talk with you about what happens to your retirement in a divorce. So one of the questions that I get asked often, especially practicing in Florida, is what happens with my retirement when my spouse and I get divorced. So any of those who have retirement out there, you're aware of the most common vehicles. There's a 401k, an IRA, a Roth IRA, some types of pensions, and other types of vehicles that people can have their money in to save for their retirement. So the first question that we need to get an answer to when talking with someone about this is figuring out whether or not there is a marital component of someone's retirement. So a lot of times what we see is where someone started contributing to their retirement before they got married. And sometimes not only that, but they stopped contributing to their retirement before they got married. If there are funds that were contributed to a retirement and were stopped being contributed to before the date of marriage, then that's non-marital, that's not in play, that doesn't need to get divided up. So right off the bat, one of the first things that we're looking for was any income that was earned during the marriage put into the retirement account, thereby making the account, or at least a portion of the account, marital. So once we know that there is marital monies being put into a retirement account, and thereby knowing that there is a marital asset there, then we can have the conversation about how do we address this issue. So in Florida, we have something that attorneys refer to as a quadro. Quadro is based off of the letters QDRO, or Qualified Domestic Relations Order. And this is a specific order that the court needs to enter. It can either be entered as part of a final judgment or as a separate decree, but it's a domestic order that allows the whoever is managing the retirement vehicle to divide up a retirement asset from one asset into two assets. And one of the two biggest reasons that this is important is, first, that it can avoid taxes that could be assessed if you just pulled the money out of the account. And number two is there's additional fees that sometimes can be assessed for pulling monies out of an account, either early or not in compliance with whatever the guidelines are for that specific account. So it's important that a quadro be done when dividing up retirement accounts between parties, because it helps avoid these expenses being incurred as a result. So another question is, who needs a quadro? Well, if you're a spouse in a pending divorce and you have retirement that has a marital component to it, very likely you need a quadro done. Aside from what a quadro does, it's important to figure out how much each party is getting. So there's a phrase that we use called the coverture fraction. A coverture fraction means for what period of the entire life of the retirement were the parties married. Oftentimes, the parties weren't married for the entirety of the time that somebody was contributing to that retirement, and therefore the entire asset is not subject to being divided between the parties, only the portion of that vehicle that the parties were married during. So it's important to know, because it's not always just dividing up the whole asset. It may be a smaller portion of the asset that's getting divided up between the parties. Another question that often comes up is, what if both of us have a retirement? Well, it's important that you understand, and it would be helpful to go back and review the Peace series that I did, specifically equitable distribution, because we're not always just dividing up a retirement asset. We're looking at the entire marital estate and figuring out what each party is getting. It is oftentimes the case that not the party who has the retirement asset, but the party who's seeking an equalizing payment is getting a much smaller fraction of the retirement asset as a equalizing payment and equitable distribution. So in some cases where all the assets have been divided up between the parties, all the debts have been divided up between the parties, it may only be something like, let's say, $5,000 is needed to equalize the parties in the divorce. Well, in that situation, then the party with the retirement asset who needs to make that equalizing payment can just do a quadro for that $5,000 amount to the other party. One thing that often comes up and is important to understand is that when we're doing these qualified domestic relations orders and those monies are getting moved over from the spouse with the retirement account to the spouse seeking it, the present day value may not be the same as cash in hand, because for that party to then pull that money out of the account after the quadro is done, they may be paying the taxes and fees. So oftentimes, $5,000 in present day cash might require a little bit more to be taken from a retirement account to address such things as early withdrawal fees and taxes and things of that nature. Lastly, one of the questions that we're often asked is who can do a quadro? The answer is any attorney can do a quadro, but not all attorneys should be doing quadros. Personally, we have a team of experts that we outsource this to. We use them when we're doing divorces with retirement accounts, because it's important for us to make sure that that order is exactly right, so that there's no issues with your retirement, and once the matter's done, you know the right amount of money is being removed, you know that it's being done the way that it's supposed to be done. That way you're not going to be having any problems with it in the future. So hopefully this answered some of your questions as to what happens with retirement and a divorce. If you have any other questions, you're always welcome to give us a call. You can email me. You can check us out on social media. You can check out our YouTube channel. Please reach out. I never have a problem talking with you guys about any family law questions that you have. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.